Good morning and welcome to Rising. I am genuinely excited for our show today, as I am every day, of course.
What makes today particularly special?
No, I like the topics we're discussing. They're pretty good.
Okay.
And they are every day, to be abundantly clear. Today is not special.
Well, coming up to talk about some of those topics, I'll be discussing how Speaker Mike Johnson is stalling a newly elected Congresswoman swearing in and why even Thomas Massie is calling him out.
Plus, a Morning Joe panelist is calling on Democratic Virginia Attorney General candidate Jay Jones, whose text messages fantasized about violence being recently leaked, to drop out of that race.
And Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson is establishing what he calls an ICE-free zone in the city. But first, Robby, what's on your radar?
Well, excited to talk about this one. Now, in the resignation letter announcing her departure from the Gray Lady in July of 2020, the opinion journalist Bari Weiss memorably lamented that, quote, Twitter is not on the masthead of the New York Times, but Twitter has become its ultimate editor. What Weiss meant was that the extremely progressive sensibilities of elite social media users, leftist activists, educators, journalists, Democratic campaign staffers, etc., held undue sway over the range of views that could be printed in the opinion pages. This was a constant source of frustration for Weiss, a centrist thinker critical of the left, whose mission was to bring some measure of ideological diversity to the paper. In her letter, she bragged about having published independent and contrarian writers, such as Jesse Singal, Glenn Lowry, Thomas Chatterton Williams, Nick Gillespie, and others. But in the summer of 2020, the collective set of ideologies, habits, and preferences commonly referred to as wokeness still ruled the roost. Now, much has changed in the last few years, and they are about to change even more noticeably at another large media company. That's because Bari Weiss is set to become the editor-in-chief of CBS News. Parent company Paramount has also purchased the Free Press, the media company that she built from scratch in the years since leaving the New York Times, for an eye-popping $150 million.
I'm going to continue to lead this incredible community alongside my tireless team, remaining CEO and editor-in-chief of the Free Press, and of course, hosting this show. But as of today, I'll be taking on another title too. I'm now editor-in-chief of CBS News, working with new colleagues on the programs that have impacted American culture for generations, shows like 60 Minutes and Sunday Morning, and also shaping how millions of Americans read, listen, watch, and most importantly, understand the news in the 21st century.
In other words, over the course of just 5 years, Weiss has gone from an underappreciated mid-level editor at a hostile to her newspaper to the boss of a major television news company, making millions in the process. One doesn't have to be in sympathy with Weiss's views in order to appreciate the staggering nature of this achievement. She has pulled off an elaborate Count of Monte Cristo-style revenge, if not over the Times itself, at least over the sort of people who made her experience at the Times so miserable. The misery in Weiss's telling was indeed thorough. She claims her colleagues bullied and badgered her for daring to solicit opinions that conflicted with their own, even though that was the job the Times had hired her to perform. This tension had culminated just 1 month prior to her resignation in a full-on staff revolt over an op-ed by Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas that called for the National Guard to be deployed to quell post-George Floyd rioting in U.S. cities. How interesting. Progressive staffers framed their opposition to that op-ed as a matter of workplace safety for them. They said this op-ed put the lives of black staffers at risk and constituted a form of violence. The argument they made was not, we question the wisdom of sending the Army into cities to conduct law enforcement, which would have been a fine argument. Their argument was, you should not be allowed to write this. In other words, it wasn't an argument at all. Now again, back in 2020, that was par for the course. A phenomenon that previously remained confined to elite college campuses had spread throughout social media like a disease, infecting workplaces that disproportionately hired young, uber-progressive people. Hit the media industry particularly hard. The Times was not alone in having to reckon with junior employees suddenly making unreasonable demands for emotional safety. Now, Twitter may have served as the ultimate editor, in Weiss's telling, but actually Slack, the online communications platform used by many businesses, particularly media companies, was where the social media constructed opinions of woke youngsters took shape as internal enforcement mechanisms for groupthink. Now, since at least 2016, when Donald Trump made opposition to political correctness a central aspect of his presidential campaign, many libertarian, contrarian, and heterodox figures, including Weiss herself and including yours truly, have warned that the thing we now call wokeness would engender massive backlash. Weiss's elevation to the position of editor-in-chief of CBS News is, in some sense, one of the clearest indicators yet that wokeness in media, like wokeness everywhere else, is a loser. It's losing in the marketplace of ideas. It's losing in the actual, literal marketplace. Now Weiss isn't Trump or MAGA, to be clear, and though the mainstream media is already describing CBS News as facing a hostile takeover from a, quote, Trump-friendly journalist, the Free Press does run plenty of criticisms of Trump and his movement, particularly on foreign policy. Their sensibilities are actually far more neoconservative than MAGA's or than mine, and the publication's uncompromising support for Israel is a bit out of step with many of the right's more popular online figures these days, Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Candace Owens, Joe Rogan, and others. Now, to its credit, the Free Press does regularly feature debates on this subject, including one between Coleman Hughes and Dave Smith just this week. Now, for her part, Weiss has announced no specific plans to radically rebrand or reformat CBS News. In a letter to all employees of the company, she outlined 10 core journalistic values that she thinks the company should exemplify under her leadership. They're all inoffensive and non-ideological. Even so, CBS News veterans are anonymously telling media reporters that they are, quote, encouraging Weiss not to interfere with 60 Minutes or CBS News Sunday Morning. Okay. Good luck with that, guys. It seems a little bit delusional on their parts to think she won't have a say in what goes on there. So this was some big news.
It was.
Yesterday, breaking as we were
on air.
and rising, yeah.
I was waiting for it to come down. We kind of talked about it, and I might have a bit of a contrarian view to a lot of people who think they know what I'm going to say, but I'm actually happy for her. I think more as a production company owner, as a free thinker, as somebody who understands that there are traditions that are in place and not spaces for people that create their own or question authority. A lot of times, you know, this is a great move for somebody in her position, and for her, like you said, you don't have to agree with everything she says to know that this is a huge accomplishment for somebody of her age and somebody of her mindset. And so there are plenty of things that I would say, oh, be critical on this and that, but there also are other people at CBS News that also report to Paramount and Skydance, like the president of CBS News, that'll still be in place, and you'll have parallel roles reporting to one, or no, not reporting to one another, conversing with one another on the same playing field, and both reporting to the leaders of the company. So it's not like the buck stops with her, period, and no one else is at the table.
And it's not even clear what
adding another voice to the
and it's not even clear what that would mean, because she doesn't, in the publication she runs, the Free Press, she does not enforce a specific ideological line. What she does is curate interesting, sometimes contrarian opinions that they might clash with progressives, but she also caters to ones that do clash with Trump, again, particularly on foreign policy. So it's not like, I think some in the mainstream media are acting as if CBS has just brought in some hardcore Trump zealot to run their news organization to appease him. But like, that's not her at all. It doesn't, you have to be completely unfamiliar with who she is and the publication she built to think that's the case.
And I think the series of events at CBS and Paramount are raising alarm for some, rightfully so. They've raised alarms for me, not Bari Weiss specifically, but for example, when CBS hired Trump's former Japan ambassador to be the ombudsman, which is a fancy word for saying somebody who dictates whether the news is swaying one way or another, and you're hiring somebody who used to work for Trump to be the one to do that. That's not actually apolitical. That's a little weird, especially when you just sued the company and they, decided to go along with that lawsuit, pay you out so it can go to your presidential library. And so Bari Weiss to me is a separate thing, but people are culminating everything that's happened at CBS and Paramount over the last year and saying, this is an additional thing that we'll just raise our eyebrows at, because I don't think even Bari Weiss wants to see the coverage of CBS News just turn into like a Fox.
Right.
That's to me wildly inappropriate. What we should see is that there are more people who feel like they're less heard by these quote unquote mainstream outlets, garnering the attention that has been split and divided through social media, through podcasting. Like, a lot of that audience feels lost. She actually celebrates and has space for people that are young. She has events for people under 30. I think that audience
dating events, social, like go meet your future boyfriend or girlfriend at some of these events. And yes, to your point, in her branding for the Free Press, she says for people who want something different from the New York Times or from Fox News. That's explicitly in her branding. So the idea that she's going to turn it into another Fox, she hasn't done that with the media company that she started from scratch and built to a $150 million acquisition.
And you can't be the boss that you complained about. So if somebody comes to you with a contrarian point that's against what you believe on a certain stance, if she does the same thing to someone else, then we will find that there will be another Bari Weiss that'll leave her company and go start something better rather than coordinate.
What a lesson to what we used to call the woke people are just so.
I think this is more of a lesson to not embracing.
They chased her out of the New York Times, and woke people who think she's so evil. She is now set to run CBS because they chased her out of the New York Times. If you just let her, toil in relative obscurity as a mid-level editor of the New York Times, from the woke perspective, she would be doing far less damage to your cause. So it's kind of a lesson in unintended consequences. There's much more I could say on this subject, and maybe I'll have more to say on it later in this week. But for now, a crackdown on ICE from the mayor of Chicago up next, how he's attempting to stop the agency from operating on city property. Stay with us.
Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson taking another step in his city's pushback against the Trump administration. The mayor signed an executive order that prohibits ICE and other federal agencies from using city property to carry out their immigration enforcement.
The city is putting up signs on ICE-free zones that say the area may not be used as a staging area, processing location, or operations base for federal agencies. Here's some of what Mayor Johnson had to say about it.
We said that they would use ICE as a pretext to send in the National Guard. And now they are doing just that. I've also said for the last couple of years that the extreme right in this country refused to accept the results of the Civil War. They have repeatedly called for a rematch. But in the coming weeks, we will use this opportunity to build greater resistance. Chicagoans are clear. Militarizing our troops in our city as justification to further escalate a war in Chicago will not be tolerated.
The Trump administration reacted to the executive order quickly. The White House Rapid Response Team on X says, quote, "This is sick. He is aiding and abetting criminal illegal immigrant killers, rapists, traffickers, and gangbangers."
The account then went on to post an article from Breitbart, which alleges at least 30 people were shot in the Windy City over the weekend. Elsewhere, there was outrage from the right over the mayor's executive order. Commentator Steven Crowder says liberal mayors like Chicago's Brandon Johnson would rather make sure illegals feel safe in his city than, actually prioritize his American constituents. This man is an absolute joke. And DHS Secretary Kristi Noem also chimed in, saying Chicago's mayor just reaffirmed his allegiance to criminal illegal aliens with his pathetic ICE-free zones declaration. Fortunately for the innocent citizens of Chicago, the Trump administration doesn't protect criminals, we arrest them.
Now, DHS said Friday that ICE has arrested more than 1,000 people since the Chicago operation began. The Vera Institute of Justice estimates there are roughly 1.7 million immigrants residing in the Chicago metro area. Your face was like, while Brandon Johnson was speaking, why was it so disheveled?
The Civil War reference, what was that? I feel
Trump just referenced that the people of the military should use a training grounds within our country last week when he was with Pete Hegseth.
Does he not?
So that would constitute people being concerned that is there some type of civil war? Bro? You're sending military on our own people.
I think, but the point goes the other way. Brandon Johnson maybe doesn't know what the Civil War was fought over or what happened in it, because in the Civil War, the South tried to do its own the states of the South tried to do their own things, and we, the federal government, came in and killed them all for doing their own thing. Like, we said, no, you don't get to do that. The federal government gets to tell you no more slavery, no more whatever policies you're going to do.
It's reversed in this instance.
It's reversed, where he is asserting the authority to have his city's own immigration policy contrary to the wishes of the federal government on an issue, immigration, that is clearly the purview of the federal government because the Supreme Court has said so. So it was a wrongful analogy, and like what they're going to say, you can't have federal authorities doing immigration here?
I don't see any issue with what he's saying. He's saying our school parking lots are not for ICE or their weapons. He's saying our libraries.
I would like to say my household is not for taxing.
He's saying our libraries are not for ICE or raid or for staging. Our parks are not for ICE. People who live in Chicago, residents, have vocalized being uncomfortable, startled by the sight of military gear and people who are marching in camouflage, walking through their streets. That's an actual concern for some people. There are elementary schools on the west side where parents are stand up and organizing outside of school during the let out so that ICE is not there disrupting the peace.
This is a great idea.
Young kids
this is a great idea. I'm declaring, I am in this spirit, I'm declaring my apartment an IRS-free zone. Just like his parking lot is an ICE-free zone. No, my apartment is now an IRS-free zone. It's a tax haven.
He's governing his state.
You do not have to pay taxes if you're a resident of my apartment. You see how ridiculous this is?
Do you believe in you're not a state. So I believe in states' rights. I believe in cities to govern.
You believe in states' rights?
Yeah, I do. I certainly do.
All right. I would love to see some consistency on this from
Yeah, I do.
liberals.
I believe in states' rights.
Let's do that all the way down.
I believe in states' rights. And so I think like if you're going to...
you love federal civil rights law. That's not a state policy.
Yes,
that's
that was necessary
law.
in order for us to get civil rights in this country. People were treating people
poorly,
which is what the Civil War.
Then you're for states' rights. You're for states' rights on issues where you agree with the states.
No, I believe that states should govern themselves a little bit differently, not when it comes to racism or discrimination, right? Obviously, everything that's, this is what we were fighting for, equal justice. That should be a blanket statement for federal things. But if Chicago runs itself differently than D.C., which runs itself differently than Washington State, these are all different places that should run themselves the way that they're comfortable. And if they want to go through proper channels to have the president working with them to bring in federal authorities, then they should work together. Like I've been saying, it's not that federal authorities can't be there, but perhaps there's a better means to get migrants out of here, because the goal was to get criminals out, and they're just bombarding people and going places where they're not criminals. They're just taking anybody who may or may not be a migrant and causing chaos and havoc, so that parents at school drop-offs are like, let's create like a barricade to make sure that our kids can just get in the car safely. That's uncomfortable. Think about day-to-day life. If I'm dropping my kid off at school and there's maybe a migrant child there, somebody whose family was a DACA person, then this is just, you're creating uncomfortable tension for people that are not criminals. So yes, if you believe that all migrants should get out, then that's your prerogative. But there's a way to go about it, and there was Congress
a lot of people
had a
voted for that.
bipartisan
That's
bill.
not my policy, but that's what
Yes,
people
but Congress
voted
had a
for and wanted
bipartisan bill that
Trump
could have
to
been
do.
passed through Congress when President Trump was running, but he didn't want that to happen.
We didn't
because
need
he
it.
wanted to win the election.
And the Republicans were right about that.
And so here we
were
are.
told we needed that bill to get border security. We have the lowest level of border crossings. I was just looking at these statistics this morning. Lowest level of border crossings in years, maybe in decades, with no adjustment in any funding levels, anything at the border. It's through Trump's
through
sheer
fear
person.
tactics, and because he wants to strong arm everybody. So if that's the way that you want to run your government, great. But I think it's better when we work through Congress. Yeah, and I disagree. I think if there's another way to go through Congress and have laws on the books and abide by laws. You know, the law and order president should create laws and not just go carte blanche and do whatever.
Going back to the states' rights thing, don't you have to concede that you're not really making an argument for states' rights unless you concede that if we do that framework, that allows the state to have policies that you don't agree with on, whatever vis-a-vis the national government. You're really just saying you like what Brandon Johnson's doing in this case, and you're laundering that argument through states' rights.
No,
I would be committed to a states' rights framework, even if the states are going to choose policies that I myself wouldn't agree with. I would prefer that, yes, than a federal policy.
I'm saying the same thing consistently that I've said from the beginning, is that President Trump needs to have dialogue with these state leaders, whether he likes them or not, and city leaders, whether he likes them or not. That's mandatory in order to have long-term lasting change. Mm-hmm. And if the change is that some MAGA people don't want any migrants here whatsoever, and they're going to watch businesses crumble because of that, great, go about it the proper way. But if you're just going to send troops in there and put a Band-Aid on a problem, it's like, that's not a good solution to me. No. That's very aggressive and not what the people who want to have a peaceful life in Chicago want in the interim. There's a way to go about it that doesn't disrupt the peace of all civilians there and migrants that aren't even doing anything but working to help put food on your table or to help make life better for you because no one else is taking these jobs. There's plenty of people that are just living their day-to-day life that are getting harassed right now. And I've been seeing people parachuting in, collecting migrants, and it's very dramatic. And it feels very much like, what's the video game? What's the video game? Like Grand Theft Auto, one of those crazy video games. It feels very much like that. It feels very much like it feels very much. It doesn't need to be like that.
Look,
okay.
In the free state of Suave, you don't have to pay any taxes, which I'm starting in my apartment. It'll be no taxes, no immigration enforcement. Come on down.
You're not a state though. You're not an official, local official.
Look it up.
New fallout from comments made by a Democratic candidate in Virginia. How some on the left are responding to Jay Jones. Don't go anywhere. New bombshell revelations about Jay Jones, the Democratic candidate for Virginia Attorney General.
We spoke yesterday in My Radar about his alarming text messages in which he fantasized about the shooting of then Speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates and also wished death on his kids. Those texts were leaked to the public by a fellow Virginia delegate, Carrie Coyner. She's the one who got the messages, and she's explaining this more fully, telling the New York Post that 2 years prior to those comments, in a separate conversation regarding qualified immunity for police, Jones told her, quote, well, maybe if a few of them, police, died, they would move on and not shooting people, not killing people.
Jones' comments have sparked a firestorm of backlash, with Republicans calling on Jones to drop out of the race and calling on their Democratic colleagues to urge him to drop out. So far, Democratic gubernatorial candidate Abigail Spanberger has not called on Jones to drop out, but some on the left have not been silent. Take a listen to John Heilman on Morning Joe.
Even some Democratic leaders, John Hyman, have started to say, like, look, this is inappropriate.
It's wildly inappropriate under any circumstances. Yes. Today, tomorrow, 10 years ago, 6 months ago. I think the pressure is going to be on Spanberger and for the party to ask this candidate to just quit the race, because just both, it's the right thing, and also the political splashback. You don't want to mess with this right now.
Who says that?
I think the right thing to do is basically this guy should do everyone a favor and step out of the race.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a reminder, he accidentally sent these text messages to a Republican colleague, and then instead of having the reaction I think most of us would have, the like,
Whoopsie.
oh crap, I didn't mean it, sorry, wrong message, and this is out of context. He then continued to argue with her, justifying why he had said that and why he genuinely feels that way. It's really disturbing stuff, especially the talk about the kids. Look, I'm more skeptical than a lot of other people about violent or overheated or warlike rhetoric in politics actually having some real-world effect. But this is a moment where there's been the murder, assassination of Charlie Kirk, political violence, concerns about that. So it's just not a good moment for this kind of thing to come up. And again, it wasn't just like the overheated remark at the call. It was genuinely wishing for his kids, who he called fascists or Nazis, to die. Really, just very disturbing, unprofessional. If you're running for political office, like, you gotta, I don't like that we all have to sanitize how we speak to each other so much these days, but if you're running for political office, don't put that in a text message, you idiot. It almost betrays stupidity.
Well, you talk a lot about social media being a place where, like, unfiltered thoughts, and sometimes people might think something crazy, but they'll, might say it on social media. I guess when you're running, you would think that you would keep that out of a text message, even though that's still a crazy thought to me.
Because it gets stripped of context.
But when you say something ridiculous to me one time, it's like, okay, maybe you were trying to entertain somebody, you thought they might laugh about something, but when you say something 3 times that involves killing or death and talking about cops now, and like there's several messages, you actually have a little bit of a problem. And so I'm not mad at people calling him to step down. I don't know that the gubernatorial candidate needs to jump in. She can just say, okay, I'm in the middle of a race and I'm winning and I would like to move forward. That's not my problem, because no one has to take on a burden of somebody else's damage that they've done to themselves and bring it onto their campaign in a winning position. However, there are plenty of people that can speak out if they would like to say, we condemn this type of violence. I think that studies have shown us that a lot of violence is not pointed to the left. And so even though you and I debate that all day, this would be one of those examples to say, well, we don't align with what he's talking about. That's absurd. And perhaps he should do the right thing and step down. But
we'll see if he actually gets out of this race, because, Ralph Northam, the former governor of Virginia, had that scandal. He didn't resign. I think his LG had a scandal. It didn't resign. There was the blackface costume, Klan costume thing. Well, you're from Colorado, so you might not even remember that one. You can't make people resign, but you can say your perspective about it and go on record so that people know. Yes. Next up, in my lens, many Democrats are becoming concerned that some Republicans are using the government shutdown to distance from another issue at hand. Guess what it is? Stick around. All right, Lindsey, what's in your lens today? We're talking about Epstein. So when politicians start ducking questions, it's usually because they're standing in the middle of a fire. Many Democrats are convinced that Republicans are now using the government shutdown to stave off further scrutiny of President Trump's relationship with the late pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson is pushing back against that connection.
Democratic congresswoman from Arizona who would be a critical vote to releasing the Epstein files. How do you respond?
It's totally absurd. Charge? This has nothing to do with that. It's another red herring.
He later took to MSNBC to double down.
I'm for maximum disclosure. I want every page of this out. Donald Trump's not implicated in this. If he was, you'd have known about it a long time ago. He wants to protect the innocent victims. He and I have talked about this. He's very passionate about that. But he's for maximum disclosure, and his DOJ is shown that.
Now, Robby's favorite person, Thomas Massie, was not buying that story. He posted on X, quote, contrary to what Speaker Johnson is doing, or what he says, Speaker Johnson is doing everything he can, including delaying the swearing in of the most recently elected member of Congress and spreading misinformation about the legislation to block a vote in Congress on legislation to release the Epstein files. Now, what's Massie talking about? He's talking about Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva, who won a special election in Arizona to fill her late father's seat. A plaque with her name already hangs on her door, but Republicans are refusing to let her take oath. Why? Because her vote could be the one that tips the scale. Now, Grijalva has promised to back a bipartisan petition that would force a vote to release the Justice Department's Epstein files, the documents that might finally reveal who knew what about when about one of the most powerful predators in modern history. Democrats say Johnson is keeping her sidelined to stall that vote. His office insists it's, quote, standard practice, but that excuse doesn't hold water. He's sworn in 2 Republicans this year when the House wasn't even in session. So let's call it what it is, a stall tactic with a side of smoke and mirrors. Behind the scenes, the White House and Republican leaders are reportedly pressuring 3 GOP women, Representatives Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, to withdraw their signatures from the discharge petition. But for now, those women aren't budging. As Senator Chuck Schumer put it, quote, House Republicans care more about protecting the Epstein files than protecting the American people. Here's the thing. Secrecy has a shelf life. Every time leaders try to dodge transparency, public trust burns a little bit slower, but it still burns. If the Epstein files are really nothing more than a, quote, red herring, then prove it. Release the files, all of them, the Treasury files, everything. Because when people in power hide behind process and timing, it only confirms what we already suspect, that where there's smoke, there's fire. And this one isn't going out anytime soon. Sorry, Robby. We got to talk about it.
Now I don't mean to be, I should not be conflated with the side who doesn't want to talk about the Epstein files.
Well, you said, oh, it's just, it's the Democratic hoax. You were on that bandwagon
I never said it's a Democratic hoax.
You very much were like.
I've said that some of the claims of the people who are obsessed with this story do not add up if you closely scrutinize the stories of the accusers. It's a gross thing to do. Nobody wants to appear to be on the side of sexual abuse, particularly sexual abuse of underage people, although not all of these people were actually underage at the time they alleged the behavior happened, and they have changed their stories or recanted accusations in exchange for million-dollar payouts from some wealthy people. But I'm all for disclosing whatever we need to know. It's a strange story that has baffled people for a long time. If Epstein has connections to Israeli intelligence or U.S. intelligence, and that's why his confinement in prison initially was far gentler than it ought to be. This is all stuff that should come out. And if powerful people are being protected, let's reveal it. But I no longer suspect that's the case. I suspect.
But
I mean, they're powerful people.
Do you not think that is strange?
There's not. It's
you use
not
the word
Trump
strange. So do you not think that it's strange that we're not swearing in a new elected congressional person because of what? And we've done it in the past this year. Johnson has done it himself with 2 Republican people. So it's like, why would we avoid swearing in Grijalva when she has a seat and she's going to be the final vote that moves Massey, who you love, idea forward? Why can't we? How can Johnson explain himself? Can you explain him?
Well, I'm not going to.
He's going on MSNBC.
My job is not to defend.
For sure, it's not. But I'm trying to understand why is nobody calling him to the fire? MAGA should be pressing him the same way the Democrats are looking at these clips and saying, "What is this? Why would you stall this woman?"
A lot of people in MAGA, and I'm going to criticize them now, were, I think, only interested in the Epstein story because they were hoodwinked by their own thought leaders into thinking that disclosure of the Epstein files, if Kash Patel and whoever else got into power, disclosure would mean powerful Democratic figures like the Clintons or whoever else were going to be exposed as child rapists. That's what let me finish. That's what MAGA thought, and that is not true. Now Democrats are interested in it because they think the reverse, that more disclosure is going to be embarrassing for Trump and going to show embarrassing associations between Trump or Republican figures and child sex crimes. And that's not true either. Neither side is going to get what they want, which is why this is now less of a story. People were hoodwinked, blinded by partisanship, thinking this was the answer. My enemies are pedophiles. This is what it will be proven when there's more disclosure, and that's not the case.
And I just think that the American public deserves better, whether it's Democrats, Republicans, or major business leaders or other people that are paying money to get things done, or whether there are international governments. I think that the point is the transparency is necessary. People are confused about how long that this person could go on and commit these crimes, whether you believe the specific people at the Capitol that were sharing their testimony, or whether you understand that this is a convicted criminal and all his associates, and people just want to understand how he was able to get away with this for so long. All that information should be released so that we can all be quelled in our concern that this will never happen again in coordination with our or any government. And if we don't see any smoke and fire there, then there's no smoke and fire. But what is the holdup?
Right, but again, you just said able to get away with this for so long. So he was sent to prison in the end of the aughts on a sexual misconduct charge that was weaker than it ought to have been. His crimes were much more serious than what he got, but what I've learned from reading the reporting is that the evidence against him in the form of the accuser's statements was not as compelling. There was they were going to get torn apart in cross-examination because they were not credible individuals. And so that is something prosecutors weigh as they determine what kind of sentence to bring. How credible are the witnesses I will summon at trial? So that was so you're asking, like, why was he allowed to get away with it? There's an answer to that we know. Like, that's why.
Something else they may weigh is that if a powerful government is like, hey, go easy on him, then that's something else that may be weighed. And so if that comes to the light, that's a big issue.
But no one has presented a shred of evidence that was the case.
Well, people just want to see all the files. People want to see everything available, and then let the shreds of evidence come forward. And so there was a point where, and maybe you eased up off your stance.
There's no explanation when there is an explanation.
No, that's not good enough. I think that's
well, then it's okay. Then you're just rejecting what is publicly saying. That's
no. There's
not what
a lot
I
more
wanted to
information
hear.
available that Trump's administration has access to that can be released. There's a lot more information available, and so it's just like, why are they blocking Massey from releasing? Just be extremely transparent. If you say we have all the information we need and that everything has been done the correct way, and we're just making something out of nothing.
I didn't say we have all the information.
No, I'm saying
we
if
need.
President Trump. I'm not you.
I said there are. But there is also information that is already available.
And there's more, though, that's not available.
Explain some of the government's conduct in how it handled Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not saying it was correct or handled well. I would want to know more information. The area of this where I want to know more information, obviously the potential intelligence connection, and Ghislaine Maxwell does have an intelligence connection. So
mind you, President Trump said he mentioned something that riled people up yesterday about Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah,
and so whether or not he pardons her is a big concern. Why would he have any incentive on even considering pardoning her?
And Epstein's connections to the Virgin Islands, where he headquartered himself after coming out of prison and bought a lot of political favors from the government there, and had some associations with the Bank of America and some other continued as an association with Bill Gates. That stuff is all very sketchy, and I'd be happy to continue learning more information about it.
Me too.
Up next, many Republicans are outraged over documents showing how the Biden FBI obtained 9 lawmakers' phone records. Republican lawmakers. Stay with us. Republicans are accusing the Biden administration of political weaponization after his FBI obtained 9 GOP lawmakers' phone records.
The phone records were obtained via a grand jury, but it's not entirely clear why investigators at the time were seeking them. This happened under the FBI's Arctic Frost investigation, which was related to their January 6th riot probe.
The targeted Republicans include Senators Ron Johnson, Lindsey Graham, Bill Hagerty, Josh Hawley, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, Cynthia Loomis, Marsha Blackburn, and Representative Mike Kelly. Now, Senate Judiciary Chair Chuck Grassley held a press conference yesterday with some of those targeted lawmakers. Here's part of it.
There's no predicate that we can find for the solicitation of these telephone records, which I think emphasizes the political weaponization that was behind all this effort.
They're casting this net, this fishing expedition against members of the Senate and the House.
Former Special Counsel Jack Smith took over the investigation after Arctic Frost began in April 2022. Now, Arctic Frost centered around efforts from Trump and his allies to challenge the 2020 election. Congressional reporter Jamie Dupree dumped a bit of cold water on the Republican outrage, writing on X, quote, "Why would the FBI have tracked Rep. Mike Kelly from Pennsylvania about January 6th? Because his office was involved in Trump's fake electors' effort to overturn Joe Biden's victory." Dupree also posted screenshots of footage he says showed an aide to Kelly trying to get those fake elector documents to Senator Ron Johnson.
Naturally, conservatives were not happy with the news. Congressman Thomas Massey wrote on X, "This is insane. What's more insane, the Republican-controlled House and Senate and White House won't cut anyone's budget who did this. Also, no one will be fired." Which is a shame because they absolutely should. Now our FBI is doing surveillance of our elected representative. I mean, this is the problem. I'm told we're a democracy, and the democracy is so important, is in fact in stake. If we vote for, at stake, if we vote for Trump, we're not going to have democracy anymore. This is the Democratic Party's entire rhetoric and framing around our electoral consequences is that we need to have democracy. Does democracy not mean that the FBI, the bureaucrats should be accountable to the elected representatives, not the other way around? Here, elected representatives being surveilled by this is the deep state. Well, this is the deep state at work.
Subpoenas are routine in federal investigations. I mean, this was a serious investigation. These were court approved, not secretly taken or politically ordered, right? They're trying to get to the bottom of everything that happened surrounding January 6th. There were people that were riled up specifically because they thought the election was stolen, remember? Okay, so then if you connect the dots and try to see who was establishing timelines on what networks and look at conversations that were being had, especially when it comes to fake electors and all the different things surrounding it, I think this is important information to find out. How else do you figure out what was being said when, to figure out what the issue was? What
was being said when? Well, what's
wrong with looking into this? This is a court approved. Like a judge who's apolitical said, yes, go ahead, you can take. A judge that's apolitical said, yes, you can go ahead and do this. Why are you laughing about that? Judges are meant to look at the rule of law and say, yes, you should go forward.
This is, I mean, Arctic frost, this is dystopia kind of stuff. This is surveillance of our elected representatives. This is
You don't want to see who communicated with who leading up to the January 6th riot? Like, if there's an inkling that anyone knew anything about what was going to happen, that would be a major issue.
Can I have some disclosures about what the FBI knew, the law enforcement agencies? The elected representatives have free speech. They have First Amendment rights. They have civil liberties. They should know that the FBI should not get to decide, I don't like their political advocacy for Trump, and so I'm going to watch them, even if it was above board, even if you got a judge to sign off on it. That's easy to do, by the way. It doesn't make it right. It makes it, this is exactly why, by the way, as a libertarian, I have opposed the Patriot Act and FISA and all these things that Republicans now complain about, but never vote against. If you're a Republican who is outraged by the FBI surveillance of your party and you go on to vote to reauthorize FISA again, you're a very stupid person, because this is exactly what they're going to do. This is why principled, libertarian, and frankly leftist criticisms of law enforcement surveillance and massive bureaucracies were correct, where slippery slope arguments are always correct. There should be defunding of Patriot Act, defunding of the FBI, defunding of FISA. We need to blunt the instruments of the oppressors. We need to strip law enforcement of routine surveillance powers. And I'm frankly surprised to hear you opposing that, because didn't we have a big debate last week over Assata Shakur where you maligned like the FBI surveillance of the Black Panthers and the Black liberation?
I malign them killing people.
So violent criminals should not be surveilled, but our elected representatives should be?
I malign them killing people, and the whole Black Panther Party was not violent. So that's just a large misunderstood overstatement that you're intentionally mischaracterizing. But we're not going to talk about that same topic again. We're talking about right here. We're talking about a grand jury process and people that were trying to overturn the election, and violent criminals that stormed our Capitol and left people dead and injured. And people wanted to see the causation and effect of all of that, and see which lawmakers were actively either trying to overturn the election in communication with that, understanding who was in the Congress hall. If there's any investigation, to me, that's transparency. So I would like to know why this happened, because everybody who was on the Capitol, who bombarded our nation's Capitol on January 6th, is a violent criminal today.
Not everyone who was at the Capitol is a violent criminal.
You were there too. Everyone who President Trump pardoned, to me, should not have been there. Like, I don't think that was, I mean...
97% of the people who were at the Capitol...
They were motivated by lies.
They were motivated by lies. Lies are protected by the First Amendment.
But they were motivated by lies.
First Amendment protected activity they were protesting the results of the election, as is their right. They don't have to be correct about it.
Because they were motivated by lies and people actively trying to overturn the election. I mean, like, what do you mean? That's a criminal act to try to overturn a federal election. That's not... Like,
no, it's not a criminal act.
To try to overturn an election and pay electors to change their vote.
To carry a sign saying the election was stolen.
No, not carry a sign.
That is not illegal. That's the First
overturn
Amendment.
An election. I'm not talking about the protesters. I'm talking about any politician involved with trying to overturn an election. That's a criminal act. Okay, you're not supposed to overturn a federal election or pay electors to do anything of the sort. And so those people are directly motivated.
Some of them had a sincere belief that Trump had won the election and that it was being stolen from him, that the Democratic Party and Joe Biden were perpetrating a coup, they were engaged in election overturning. So you can't just use that argument.
And that was
the Republican view.
Is it untrue?
But yes, it is untrue, but you have the right to have an untrue view and to express it. That is not a crime. That is free speech. That is the First Amendment, which is why this entire thing is BS of the highest degree.
I mean, a judge has legal checks and balances, and so
Hillary Clinton thought the election was stolen. John Kerry thought the election was stolen. Al Gore thought the election was stolen because it actually was. It was unclear. This was never constituted as a crime until Donald Trump did it.
So tell me what you would like to do next, Robby, because I don't think that you or I, we can agree that the election was not stolen.
I would like you to apply your same principles of the FBI monitoring extremist groups being a problem to it monitoring our elected representatives.
They said that this was a court-approved order to try to figure out what was happening when.
You don't think the wiretaps on Malcolm X and everything else.
But the wiretapping wasn't the issue.
Court approved?
The wiretapping,
I'm sure they were.
The wiretapping wasn't the issue to me. The fact that they literally shot someone 100 times was the issue to me. The fact that local police went in and killed people that were part of the Black Panther movement intentionally was the issue to me, is what I'm saying. There were active steps taken to take people down, literally, so they're lifeless. This is not like public officials being killed because of a perspective. Now, if you need to look into a perspective to make sure someone is not committing a criminal act or motivating a criminal act, that's one thing. The second thing is to move forward and act on that and be incorrect. So that's what I'm like, what are you conflating the two? Like, nobody's after these lawmakers. They looked into
their text messages,
and now they're not
tapping their phone lines. I think that's
with
wrong.
A court-approved order. With a court, that's what I'm saying.
You're right.
It's supposed to be apolitical
because the law allows this to happen. Those laws that support this kind of thing, FISA, the Patriot Act, need to be repealed immediately. And if Republicans, at their moment of supreme political power, do not take decisive action to rein in law enforcement that is weaponized against them, they are the most irrelevant and stupid, moronic party that has ever existed. And unfortunately, that is the case because they're not going to do anything about it. It's going to come up for reauthorization, and Thomas Massie and a couple other people who are not total morons will vote against it, maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene, maybe a few others, and most of the party will fall in line behind it, not realizing that this is exactly how the deep state spies on them.
Okay, so they have some work to do then, according to you, to handle all this right now.
I got there. It's a dig at Republicans, so maybe at least you can appreciate that.
That's the one piece of this conversation that I appreciate. AOC is launching a new line of attack on Stephen Miller. Her new strategy for the resistance coming up. We'll be right back after this.
Stephen Miller is a clown. I've never seen that guy in real life, but he looks like he's like 4'10", and he looks like he is angry about the fact that he's 4'10". And he looks like he is so mad that he is 4'10", that he's taking that anger out at any other population possible.
AOC apparently launching a new line of attack on Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. Savage comments there.
I know that height is a big deal for guys.
Well, because it's a big deal for women.
We can talk about it in a second. The New York Congresswoman going off on the close Trump ally and architect of the administration's immigration policy during an Instagram Live on Sunday. But she didn't stop with simple attacks on Miller's height. Here's what she said next.
The last thing they want you to do is laugh at them. The last thing they want you to do is make fun of them. Laugh at them. Make them small. These people seek out and abuse all of this power because they want to feel big. Laugh at them. Laugh at them.
But instead of the left laughing, it seems like Stephen Miller is, here's his response on Fox. Let's see how he is.
Well, we knew that her brain didn't work. Now we know their eyes don't work. So I mean, she is a mess, right? What a train wreck. What a train wreck.
Seems like the short king comment hurt him, and I know he's not that short, but like,
he's short.
I know, I think he's
kind of made up.
Average height. I know, but how hilarious is that he's so sensitive? She's saying 4'10", and he's like so riled up about it that he's offended.
He didn't seem that offended.
He's just like, what? He started going for a low blow. Obviously, she doesn't have a brain.
I mean, he's like a frothing, like foaming at the mouth, furiously angry, worked up all the time. That was not him like losing his cool, right? He's losing his cool constantly.
Well, when you get
they're attacking ICE agents in the streets, and like that's what he's manifesting at all times. He seemed perfectly.
When you get somebody to respond to you and they spend their time on primetime responding to an Instagram rant that you did, that's pretty much getting under their skin. That's what he called him 410. She called him 410. And he's offended by that, and he's not 410.
It is an attack. So, height does seem to, well, so going back to the point I made, height matters to women is what I've found in my conversations with them.
To some.
Is that it's a big, it's an important thing. I don't know. I'm someone of normal height, so.
You're right. You're solid right in the middle.
I'm like a 5'10", 5'11" person, and yeah. But, I don't know. I've talked to guys who seem to have appealing personalities, like they do just fine for themselves on the dating market, and then they tell me, no, they're dead in the water because they're short. And I was like, really? And then I talk to my female friends, and I find out, they would never date that guy because he's too short. And I'm like, wow.
Well, I think what you get to know personality-wise. Now, Colin, my partner, is 6'3", so
yeah, he's a giant.
Yeah, pretty much. But
so he's got it made because you cannot come back from a height deficit. It's sad. It's the way it is.
But once you get to know somebody's personality, this conversation is going so left. It's like tickling me. Once you get to know someone's personality, you can just decide if the height really matters.
Then they grow a couple.
The inches. Personality adds inches in your mind.
But and women are making it even harder on the fellas out there because they're wearing, like you do, these giant shoes,
like 4 inches,
high heel shoes that give you extra height. And
I watch a show on not on Netflix. I watch that one too, but I watch the one on YouTube called Pop the Balloon, and a lot of it has to do with the guy's shortness, about why they end up popping their balloon because they're like,
what?
You go down the aisle and pop whose balloon's not your type.
Oh,
after asking a few questions, like a dating show.
Giving the rose kind of thing.
And a lot of times when they ask, the girl says, well, why do you pop his balloon? And she's like,
short.
I need you to be a little taller. And he's like, you have heels on, I'm taller than you. And she's like, no.
Yeah, see, the heels are making it hard.
But laughing does get under people's skin. To bring it full circle with AOC, I think she has a point. I think what Gavin Newsom has been doing is hilarious. If you get to the comedy and laugh at the people and then get to the actual policy, that's even better for me.
The healing power of laughter.
But yeah, laughter is funny, and I think people get riled up, like the taco thing. Ha ha ha.
This is sincere. This is genuinely sincere how this affects you.
Thing, and Trump doesn't like it. In the Oval Office, you saw him literally get riled up and offended. Like, don't you ever say that again. Like, he looked to the reporter and said, that's nasty, disgusting, don't ever say that.
I've never laughed once in my life. I find nothing.
You should laugh at more things. Humorous. Plenty of things are funny. We saw a rainbow in the sky when we started the show, and Robby
didn't react.
He wouldn't even smile. You're gonna have to smile sometime.
Not when I'm off camera. And then you started making an Instagram, like on camera again. Oh, we gotta leave it there, apparently, for the day, we're being told. That does it for us on Rising Live. Thanks so much for watching, and no disrespect to any short kings out there. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way later today, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so you never miss any of our content. Also, for those who listen while on the go, we're available anywhere you can find podcasts. See you later.